they kind of go hand in hand. We have a rule for negative exponents and exponents of 0. All right, so for this first chart here, we're just going to use our calculator and see what does our calculator give us. So I want you to type 2 to the 4th power into your calculator. Remember, you press the number 2, and then this little button over here on the side, right under the word clear. Press that, and then it should let you type a 4 as an exponent.
I got 16.
We get 16. Good. What about 2 to the 3rd power? Good. And 2 to the 2nd power?
4.
And 2 to the 1st power?
2.
Good. What does it say when you put in 2 to the 0 power?
1.
What?
1.
1 is what the calculator says.
Pairs.
Okay. Then put in 2 to the -1 exponent.
-2.
What is it? 0.5, okay. And change 0.5 into a fraction for me. Math inner. 1/2. Okay. What about 2 to the -2 exponent? What's that? Okay, and what's that as a fraction? 1/4. And 2 to the -3 power?
2 to the 4th.
2 to the -3 power would be what?
1/8.
1/8. Good.
1/16.
Yes. 1/16 is that last one.
Kind of obvious.
Good. All right, so you said it's kind of obvious. Did you notice some sort of a pattern going on here?
Yes.
Now, what was our pattern?
It gets bigger and smaller.
They do get bigger on this side, smaller on this side. In particular, you said you knew that this one was going to be 1/16. How did you know that?
It's basically the same thing on the left side, there's just one of them.
Very good. So, these ones, the one that both had exponents of 4, just one of them was a +4 and one was a -4. He said they were the same answer, but when it was the -4, it was in the bottom of the fraction, right? Okay? Same could be said about the ones with the exponent of 3, right? They're the same answer, just one of them, because it had a negative exponent, put it in the bottom, right? And then same for our exponents of 2, right? The negative exponent puts it in the bottom. And same for your exponents of 1. So basically, if you raise it to a negative exponent, it was putting it in the bottom of the fraction, but still doing the same thing to the number, right? Okay, so that's what we need to keep in mind here for our first rule. And this rule says for every non-zero number, so as long as you aren't doing it to the number 0, if you have something raised to a negative exponent, just like here, this says -n, right? It says what that really means is to take it and put it in the bottom of a fraction and just raise it to the nth power. It doesn't make the number negative, it just means put it in the bottom of a fraction, okay? All right, so keeping that information in mind, example with 6 to the -4th power. Bless you. We said what that really means is to put it in the bottom of a fraction, right? So really that would mean make this 6 to the +4 power, just put it in the bottom of a fraction. Okay, and what is 6 to the 4th power? That means 6 times 6 times 6 times 6.
I got 1296.
Yep. All right. Okay, this next one, we've got -4 raised to the -2 power. But this -2 exponent really just means put my base in the bottom of a fraction and turn it into a +2. It doesn't say to do anything to the 4. Leave the 4 alone. Just for the exponent. We do this and we make the exponent positive. What is -4 squared? What is it? 16. Very good. +16, guys.
How would it be possible?
So what does it mean to square something? times itself, right? A negative 4 times a negative 4. Two negatives make a positive.
What if it's -4 to the third?
Then it'll be negative. The negative times a negative, which makes a positive, times another negative. So it will depend on what your exponent is. All right, and then the last example here in this row, I've got 1 over 2 to the negative 3. So we've got a problem here. It's already in the bottom of the fraction, and it's negative.
Would you like turn it into a fraction? Because you started off as decimal.
Okay, so right here, 1 over 2 to the negative third. We said the way we make the exponent positive was to put it in the bottom, right? Here, this is the same as being over 1, right? So we moved it to the bottom. This was the same as being over 1, so we moved it to the bottom. But here, it's already in the bottom. So to fix it, I'm going to move it to the top. Moving it across that line is what fixes the sign. So since it was already in the bottom, I'm going to move it to the top, and now it's a positive 3 over 1. Okay, and what is 2 to the third? 8. So this becomes 8 over 1, or just 8. So what we need to realize here is if you have a negative exponent, and let's write this down. If you have a negative exponent, move it across the fraction bar to make it positive. Alright, so if it's negative and it's in the top, move it to the bottom. If it's negative in the bottom, move it to the top. You're just going to move it across that line to fix the negative sign. So for example here, we had a negative 4, so I moved it to the bottom, right? But over here, my negative was in the bottom, so I moved it in the top. So all you have to do is move it across the line to make the exponent a positive, all right? Okay, and then our second rule is for an exponent of 0. You guys told me up in the chart above, 2 to the 0 power was what?
1.
1. Can somebody tell me what 17 to the 0 power is?
1.
1. Can someone tell me what 3023 to the 0 power is?
3,001.
1. Right? Because I'm not multiplying it times anything, not even times itself, right? That's what that number means, is to multiply it times itself. I'm not multiplying it even times itself. I'm just multiplying it by basically its reciprocal, right? Which is going to give me 1. So anytime you have something raised to the 0 power, it's always just going to be 1. So what's 5 to the 0 power? 1. What's negative 2 to the 0 power? 1. What's 34.693 to the 0 power? And 1/4 to the 0 power?
1.
All right. Okay, so keeping these rules in mind, now we're going to simplify these next few examples. All right, so looking at number 1, we've got 11. Does the 11 have a negative exponent?
No.
No, the 11 does not, right?
The end does.
The m does. So I'm going to leave the 11 alone. It's perfectly fine where it is. But the m does have a negative exponent. And how would I fix that? How do we fix negative exponents? Where do we move them? Across the line. So the m is going to move to the bottom. So then I'd have m to the 5th. I can't divide 11 and m to the 5th. They're not like terms, so I'm done. Okay.
This is a fraction.
Yep, just leave it as a fraction. All right, number 2. Does the negative 4 have a negative exponent?
Oh,
Somebody said no, somebody said yes.
No.
No, it's just a negative 4. It does not have a negative exponent. If anything, its understood exponent is 1, right? So I don't need to move it. I'm going to leave the negative 4 where it is.
the x.
The x. What about the x? What am I going to do with it?
Move it to the bottom.
Right, move it across that line. So,
Negative 4 over x to the third.
And what about that y? Does it have a negative exponent?
No.
No, so I'm going to leave it where it is. Okay?
It's supposed to be on the top.
Yeah, because it was in the top with the 4. The negative 4, sorry. All right. Number 3. I've got a y to the negative 3. How do I fix it? Where do I move it to make it a positive exponent? Top, right, we just move it across the line. So then what would I have? What's it going to look like now? What's in the top now? The y to the third. And is there anything left in the bottom? No. So that's it. Huh? Oh.
That's sad. Sorry. Leave that out there. Maybe done with the rule.
All right. Let's flip it over on the back. All right. So now we're going to combine it with our previous rules. Here I'm multiplying, right? What do I do with exponents when I multiply?
Add them.
Add them. Good. Okay. So first, let's start with just the big numbers. What do I do with the 4 and the negative 2?
Negative 8.
What is it?
Multiply.
Multiply, we get
Negative 8.
negative 8. All right. And then you guys said for the exponents, we're going to add them. This m has an exponent of 2. What's the exponent for this one?
1.
1. So 2 plus 1 would give
3.
me, so I got m to the third. Okay, for n, I've got negative 2 and 4. What do I get when I add those? 2. So I'll have n squared. And that actually got rid of my negative exponents for me, so I don't have anything else I have to do. Okay. The only time you would have to do something more is if you still had a negative exponent. Then you'd leave it. Okay. All right, number 5. What am I going to do with the 5 and the 3? Multiply. What do we get? Good. All right, my exponents for a. Negative 3 and positive 2.
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So I have a to the negative 1.
And B.
B to the what? 0. Okay. So we do have a negative exponent here, right? How am I going to fix that? Where do I move it? Put it under, right? I'm going to move this down. So the 15 gets to stay, right?
15 over A to the negative 1.
A to the first, right? And what happens to B to the 0? What is B to the 0?
Nothing.
It's 1.
1. It's the number 1, remember? Right? But do we really need to write 15 times 1? No, it would just be 15, right?
Oh, it's on. I'm tired. It's alright.
I am tired. Okay. All right, on number 6, we're not multiplying, right? We've got a power and a power. So I've got the number 4 that I'm raising to the third power. So check that in your calculator. What's 4 to the exponent of 3? 64. You do the little, well, you type the number 4, and then you do the little button that's right underneath the word clear. And you put the 3. So it was like 4 times 4, which is 16, times 4 is 64. Okay? And then what do I do with the power to a power exponents? Multiply them. So what is negative 4 times 3?
12.
Negative 12. But we don't like a negative exponent, so what do I do? Move it to the bottom. So do I have to move the 64? No. So the 64 stays, and then what's in the bottom? A to the 12. Good. All right. Okay, on number 7, we're dividing. What's negative 24 divided by 6? Negative 4. And is 24 or 6 bigger? 24. So the negative 4 goes in the top. Okay, whenever I'm dividing, what do I do with my exponents? We subtract them. Good. All right, so I've got an A with a negative 5 and an A with a negative 3. So this one's tricky. So negative 5 minus negative 3. Okay? that can be tricky if you don't type it in your calculator right. So maybe instead of having two negatives, how could I make them positives? What could I do to make a to the third a positive, negative third a positive a to the third? Where could I move it? Down. Okay, so let's do that. Let's move the a to the third down. Okay, but down here, a to the negative fifth, how could I make it a positive fifth? Where do I move it? Up. So I'm going to put a positive a to the fifth in the top. Okay? Alright? Okay, then I'll copy down the rest. So we had a b to the fourth up here, a b squared down here, and a c to the 0. Alright, so now that our numbers are positives, we're going to subtract. What is 5 minus 3? 2. And where's the bigger one at? Up top. So I'm going to have a squared in the top. Alright, for b, what are my exponents that I'm going to subtract? And where's it going to go? Top. Right. 4 minus 2 is 2, and 4 is bigger than 2. And then we have c to the 0 power in the bottom, but anything to the 0 power is 1. So I can put the 1 in the bottom, but do I need it? No. So I would just have negative 4a squared b squared.
Oh my gosh. Not.
Alright, just a couple more here. Alright. Order of operations. We've got some multiplication here, but I also have a square. So do I do an exponent first, or do I multiply first in order of operations in PIMDAS? Exponent comes first. So I'm going to have to do this part over here first, okay? So I'm going to bring down that first piece exactly as it is. I'm not going to mess with it just yet. Okay, so over here I've got negative 3 squared. What's negative 3 squared? Negative 3 times negative 3 is a negative times a negative is a positive. So it's positive 9. Okay? And then what do I do with my exponents when I have power to a power? What do we do here? Multiply. So for x, what's negative 2 times 2? Negative 4. And then for for y, what's 3 times 2? 6. And what is z's exponent right now? 1. And 1 times 2 is 2. Okay. Now I can multiply, since I took care of the exponent. There's not a big number here, right? So is there anything to multiply the 9 by? No, so it's just 9. Okay, and when we multiply, what do we do with those exponents? Add. Alright, so for x, I've got 2 plus negative 4. What's that? Negative 2, so x to the negative 2. For y, I've got negative 2 plus 6. What's that? 4. And then for z, I've got 0 and 2. 2. Alright, I'm almost done, but what's wrong with this? It has a negative exponent, so how am I going to fix that? Right, just this piece needs to come down. So, in the top, I still have 9. Good. Nice. Good job. Alright, number 9. Again, before we can multiply, we got to take care of those exponents, right? So what is 2 squared? What is it? 4. Okay. And then just like over here, power to a power means I'm going to do what with the exponents? Multiply. Alright, so what's my exponent for m right here since there's not 1 written? 1. So what's 1 times 2? 2. Alright, and then for n, I've got 1/2 times 2. What's that? 1/2 times 2. 1. So into the first. Okay? Now I've got to do this other piece over here. So I got 3 squared. What's 3 squared? 9. And then for m, what am I going to do with those 2 exponents? Multiply them. What's -3 times 2? -6. Good. All right, now we can multiply. And when we multiply, we've got 4 times 9, which is good. And what am I going to do with my exponents? Add them. So for m, I've got 2 and I've got -6. What's that? What's 2 and -6? -4. So I got m to the -4. And then for n, I just have 1, right? All right, almost done. What do I do to fix this? All right, bring this part down. So in the top, I've got, and in the bottom, we've got M4. Pretty good. What is that? It was in the top.
I
I
don't
moved it
know, I
to the
was-
bottom.
It sounds like a bomb name.
Oh, I don't know. It might be. I don't know the answer to that. All right, and the last one, number 10, says evaluate this expression for r to the -3rd and s to the 4th. All right, so we have 2 to the -4, right? R squared, but what did they say r was? -3, so instead of r, I'm going to plug in a -3, and it says squared, right? And then instead of s, what did they tell us s was? 4. And it's supposed to be to what exponent? -2. Okay. All right, so I've got some with negative exponents, right? This one, where does it need to go? Bottom. And this one needs to go to the bottom. But do I have to move the -3? No. So I'm going to keep -3 squared in the top, but I'm going to have 2 to the 4th and 4 squared in the bottom, right? All right, what is -3 squared up there in the top? Not -9, +9. Make sure you put parentheses around the number like I have it written here, okay? And then in the bottom, what's 2 to the 4th? 16. And then what's 4 squared? 16 as well. Okay, and what do I do with those two 16s? Multiply. What is 16 times 16? 256.
Wouldn't 4 to the power of 4 be 1.8?
4 to the power of 4, where do we have that?
I was just asking.
4 to the power of 4, so that's 4, and 4 is 16, times 4 is 64, and 64 times 4. No. Okay. In addition to this, guys, because this one ended up not having any letters in it, you could type this into your calculator exactly as it's written right here. But you have to be super careful and make sure you have parentheses where I have parentheses to make sure you get the same answer. Because if you lose a parenthesis, your calculator won't compute it right. Okay? So it'll probably give you a decimal, but you can press math enter, turn it back into a fraction. All right.